Ejection seats. How do they work? Now, as much as I absolutely used to love watching Mythbusters whenever they came out, it really annoyed me when they did an episode on could an ejection seat flip a car over? Because they said, right, rocket ejection seat, we've got these big rockets, we're going to use them. It's like, that's not how an ejection seat works. And as you'll find out a bit later on, the rocket portion is the last part, nearly the last part, to actually work. I've also seen people in the UK making ready-controlled aircraft and want to have an ejection seat out of it. And again, they use rockets. It's not how they work. So let me explain. Right, so what do I know about ejection seats? I joined the Air Force in 1983 and spent 12 years in. I worked on Jet Provosts and Hawks, as well as Chinooks, but they don't have ejection seats. And as part of the training, wasn't part of the airframe training that I did, but when I got to Church Fenton, the first thing they do with you, once you've done all your rifles, bits and pieces, is take you through ejection seat training and ejection seat briefing. Because before you step in the cockpit, you've got to check all the pins are in to make sure it's safe. Now, you can have safer parking or safer servicing, which is slightly different. But I want to show you what the ejection seats are like. So, none of these pictures are mine. I got them all off the internet. I don't know who took them. Thank you very much to everyone that did. This isn't monetised. I'm not making any money out of it. Right. So that's the Mark III Jet Provost. It has a flat canopy. It's unpressurised, and they use these for the start of the pilot training. Once they get into the more advanced stages and perhaps started doing more high altitude work, they use the Mark V, which with this canopy and systems inside here is pressurised. Now, the way that the canopy ejects off the aircraft is different, and we'll come on to that in a bit. Right, so what does an ejection seat actually look like? So this is actually a Mark IV that was in the Jet Provost that we worked on. So you'll see there's an upper firing handle. Just down here, you can make out a black and yellow handle. That's the seat pan handle. That's your PSP, so personal survival pack. Blue leg restraints, and they go in and around the garters. Fighter pilots wear garters, not at the top of the thigh, below the knee. And because you string this, it fastens to the aircraft floor, so as the ejection seat moves up, it pulls in. And because it goes down and back and plugs into the front here, it means it pulls your leg in at twice the speed that the seat moves. Now, if your leg was out and the ejection seat went up, you just, whatever you hit, you're going to lose the body parts. Lightning aircraft, English Electric Lightning, were particularly notable for the kneecaps being very close. Now, I don't know if anyone actually lost their kneecaps, but that's what you have to be careful of. So you want your feet fully tucked in as you come out of the cockpit. Also on this one, which way around is this? Yeah. So as the ejection seat starts to lift, there's little bits here attached to the aft bulkhead on the cockpit. And when you look at these, you should see white, yellow on both sides, and that means it's all correct. If the colours are reversed, you go, oh, hold on a minute, somebody's put something in wrong, and the seat might not function correctly. Because you haven't checked something, or because you've assembled something wrong, we weren't allowed to touch them, but as the armourers. But if something looked wrong, or if a pilot, trainee pilot had knocked it and put it back and he got it wrong, the seat might not work correctly. It might not be him in it, it might be somebody else. So that was one of the things that we checked. And before the aircrew got in, they checked for themselves as well. So, and I flew on these several times, so that was really good. A little bit scary. We'll come on to that in a minute. So which way around? So that's the left-hand side. So that's your barostatic time release unit, and I'll describe what that is in a bit. Down here is your emergency oxygen bottle. So as the seat lifts up, it disconnects from the aircraft down here, and the bottle activates, and you've got oxygen for descending. On the other side, you have drogue pin. In fact, the next picture shows that side of the seat. Just give me a second. I literally just printed these, so pardon me if they're a little bit sticky. So just here, you can see yellow and white. That's where the drogue sits. That portion there is the drogue. So as the seat starts to move up, all these things activate, and a charge pushes the drogue pin out. The drogue pin is a steel bolt, fires this thing out at a great speed, pulls a cable out with it, and it pulls the drogue chute out, which then, as that hits the wind stream, that slows down enough as the seat goes away from it that it pulls out the main chute. But the next thing I want to show you is how do these seats actually work. When you pull the handle either at the bottom or the top, now the early seats, I think in the sort of 50s and 60s, the early ones, they only had the face screen one, so you literally got both hands, pull this down over your face, because they thought the wind was going to be a problem. I think all ejection seats now, or most of them, they have a lower handle that you pull up. You basically brace yourself, head back, pull, and get ready for this G. So what actually happens is you have a gun on the back of here. So as you pull the handle, either one, it pulls a cable, pulls this little metal sear, which lifts up the firing pin and then drops it. As it does that, it ignites the first charge. The seat starts to lift up. There's an inner piston. When the inner piston gets past this round bit here, there's a heat safety thing on it. That melts instantly, ignites the explosives with the heat, accelerates the seat more until it reaches that one, accelerates the seat again. Now, in a non rocket seat, that's what happens. Bam, bam, bang. But in a seat, there's actually, I don't know if this is for one seat or for two seats. There's more here than I would expect. But these are the cartridges. Now, this is the big one that goes at the top of the ejection seat. These smaller ones, depends how the canopy is being ejected off. On the Mark III Jet Provost, it ignites one of these canisters, produces gas down these pipes, goes into this locking mechanism. The gas pressure pushes to unlock it, pushes the front of the canopy up, the air gets it, lifts the canopy out of the way. On the Mark V and then Hawk, Harrier, and most of the aircraft, you have like the squiggly line on the canopy, which I'll show in a minute. That's MDC, miniature detonating cord. And that's an explosive, literally shatters the canopy, and it means the seat can start moving quicker. That's what the barostatic time release unit's for. That's one of its things. Now, originally, and then the third type that they use for the canopy is the rocket one. So the gas generator at the back produces hot gas like a rocket. And on the Tornado, for example, there's two nozzles at the front. I'm not sure how it unclamped. I never worked on Tornadoes. But there's two rocket nozzles, so it comes down the pipes, out this, and that powers the whole canopy up because you've got a long two-seat canopy there. Now, these originally, they said it was the equivalent charge of a 3-inch gun. Now, Bernard Lynch, who did all of the, or most of the early ejection seat testing for Martin Baker, a British company in Northern Ireland, he did over 30 ejections. So he did the first one. I said, how was it? They went, oh, that was a bit harsh. Can we work out how to make it smaller? So that's why it's got the little one at the top, the smaller one at the top, and then the two ring ones, sort of further down, the two round ones, two pie-shaped ones. The original one was a single charge, which just threw you out, and the G-force was far too high. They measured it, they changed it around, it was a lot easier. Now, the early ejection seats, this is what you had to do. So you're flying along, somebody hits you, half your wings come off, your engine's on fire, whatever the reason is. You reach down, you squeeze an unlocking device, pull a handle, the canopy goes off. You then reach for your face screen, the seat pops off. You grab a handle down here, and as you pull it up, you are separated from the seat. And then once you're separated from the seat and tumbling freely, you pull the ripcord handle and your parachute deploys. So a couple of things. One, what happens if you're severely injured? What happens if you're unconscious? You might miss one of those steps, in which case you're dead. Or the whole sequence takes, I don't know, say 5 seconds. Well, depends where you are. If you're quite low, if you're flying quite fast, you're already in the dirt. All right, so they soon made the seats automated. If you pull the bottom handle twice, nothing happened. You pull the top handle twice, nothing happened. If you've still got time, you pull the canopy, you pull the release, and you jump overboard, and the parachute's attached to you. So this go. Let's look at. Quickly go back onto Campies again. I was getting ahead of myself there. My apologies for this. I did print most of them on card, but some of these came out on paper and they're a bit thin and awkward. So that's a picture from the red arrows. You can see the squiggly lines. That's the miniature detonating cord. And on the Mark III Jet Provost, about here is where the device was that popped it off. And then you had a breakable pin at the back here. So it normally opens forward and backwards, but if you pull the ejection seat handle, poof, it was go. But that takes time. This is basically instant, and your seat can start to move before the canopy's blown. If you watch slow-mo videos, and I've got one to show you, or a link to one later on, that I can show you. Now, depending, so even in the Mark IV, which was like a 1960s aircraft, ejection seat, so the Mark III Jet Provosts, I think most of those were built before I was born, and I was born in 1966. And the Mark Vs were in the early 70s, so they're a little bit younger than me, but, you know, they're sort of 50 odd years old now. So, if you eject fairly low to the ground, you're flying on straight and level, bang, engine's on fire, 2,000 feet, straight and level, you pull the handle, you're out of the aircraft and dangling under the parachute in a couple of seconds, or in half a second, whatever it is. Now, what happens if you're flying at 20,000 feet? The air up there is too thin to breathe. So the barostatic time release unit, once it's gone through its sequence, so on the Mark III, it had, I think it was like a quarter of a second to allow the canopy to go. Then it pulled the main gun sear, which let the ejection seat come out. And then, when the timer had come to an end, it then measured the altitude, barometric part of the unit. If it's above 10,000 feet, so you've got an oxygen feed, it's only a small bottle, it only gives you a few minutes, but it's more than enough. You know, if you've got an aircraft that only goes to 30,000 feet, it doesn't take you long to fall with a drogue, holding you steady, down to a safe altitude of about 10,000 feet. So when it reaches 10,000 feet, the barostatic time release unit does its final part. It pulls the thing out of the way, it allows this piece to move open, and these scissors open, and that allows the main chute to pull out. And this is what the scissors look like. So that is the top of the gun. These are the scissors. I think that side, if I've got it correct, is the release unit. Oops, that side, there is the release unit. So, quite a detailed picture there at the top of the seat. If anyone has got a Mark IV seat that's fully equipped that would allow me to make a video with, then that'd be awesome, thank you, rather than using these pictures. Have to redo this again. And there's another view of how that's the main chute attached in the top box, in the head box of the seat. And there's your scissor unit, and I think that's the piece at the end. That drops down, allows that to move out, and this comes out. So, flying in a Jet Provost, absolutely awesome. You get in, you strap in, you know what you do, because you've helped pilots for, you know, a couple of years. And then the ground crew lean over. On the Mark III, between the two seats, they take out the pin for the canopy jettison, which is always a bit concerning to us, because the canopy could then go, and then knock you off the aircraft. The seats will be fine. And then on the seat, you take out the handle one, put it into the box, and take out your panhandle one, put it in the box. Ground crew also do the top one for you. So before you take off, there's a little thing at the side of the seat which has got all the pins in. If they're all there, you're safe to fly. Now, if the ejection seat ejected when you're flying at below 90 knots, there's not enough airflow to fully deploy the canopy. And if you watch the video that I'm going to tell you about at the end of the video, it shows this. The seat comes out, the pin comes out, the drogue comes out, it pulls the main chute out, but the chute's just floppy and it all goes bang. You know, I really don't want to describe what would happen to you. If the seat landed on the front, it cut your legs off. If the seat lands on the back, well, if it lands on the front, it'll probably just crush your skull as well. If it lands on the back, you know, internal organs, brain, you're done. So our seats had one of these on. Is that right way around? Yeah. So there you go. do not use below 90 knots. If you have a fire in the runway and you're doing 70 knots, you hit the brakes hard, you undo yourself from the seat and you climb out. That's what you need to do. As aircraft got more technical, there was a requirement to have what they defined as 0-0 seats. So 0 altitude, 0 speed, you know, especially for the Harrier. And I don't know if they were designed before that, but for the Harrier especially, if you suddenly lose engine thrust, you need to get out now, not in a bit, now, and you need the injection seat to work properly. And here's one. It's hit the ground. I think from the video, it hits, it skids for a bit. I don't know what it's going towards, but eventually the pilot goes, I'm out of here. I can see flames, I can see solid bits. The nose has come off. If that digs into the ground, it could flip, it could be dead. So he's pulled the handle and he's gone up. And there you can see the plume from the rocket. The rocket actually comes out from underneath, but because this is still moving forwards, obviously it looks like the flames from behind it. When I was in Germany on the Chinooks on 18 Squadron at RF Slow, we had, I think it was 3 squadron was the other side of the airfield to us, and 4 squadron were to the right of us. One day walking out to the flight line, and what would happen quite regular, the Harriers would come in onto the runway, they'd get down to, I don't know, 10-20 feet, then instead of going down the runway and then taxiing all the way back, they'd get about halfway down the runway, just turn in the hover, head towards the squadron, land, and then taxi into a hard standing hangar or whatever, or not hangar. Anyway, so it's quite common. I'm walking out to the helicopter, we're going to go and service it. Yeah, there's a Harrier, okay, it's fine. You see them every day, several times a day. Walk, 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 bang, 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 bang. Whoa, what happened there? And you just saw the Harrier going down. There was one seat going up and fully deploying the parachute, and then the pilot ended up coming down on it. The other one, unfortunately, ended up in a tree. To operate the nozzles on the Harrier, there's a chain runs around the front and back. So I think the front ones, the back ones are powered, and the front ones, the chains rotate these. I didn't work on the Harrier, so I'm not entirely sure if that's about right. Bottom chain broke, so all the 4 nozzles were hanging down. The front right one, the chain broke at the bottom, it did that. And basically the Harrier just tipped off. Pilot pulled eject, which rear canopy, 2-seat, rear canopy, rear seat, front canopy, front seat, probably quicker than that. But, so the first seat went out at that angle, he went up, came down, but the second one came out that way. He might have been okay, but there's a tree in the field and he hit the tree and unfortunately lost his life. What was interesting was, as you watched the first seat that came out, the way that the Martin Baker seat is designed to function, especially with the 0-0, especially on the Harrier, is that as the drogue came out and would slow down, and that would mean that the pilot ended up upside down, going upwards. The drogue releases as the main chute comes out. The main chute fully deploys. The whole lot swings upside down. So you're about 300 feet off the ground. So even if you sat still, and again on YouTube, you can find where they've tested these. I think Bernard Lynch does one of these. He's on the ejection seat, he goes up, he fully deploys, comes down, he's undoing the harness, someone hands him a cigarette. No, it's the 1960s, it's how things happened. But it's the fact that it's still going up as it deploys, and then it swings over and then comes down. So you're safe. Ejection seats do have limitations, and I'll show you what that looks like in a bit. But these rocket packs, exactly the same as the Mark IV ejection seat that we used, you have one of these rocket packs underneath. It'll be a different mark of seat because this portion of the seat and the other bits would need to be reinforced. And that's what it looks like. It's a bit like the ISS really. So I think there's a couple of nozzles and all of these burn. It's like 0.1 of a second. And to operate that, as the seat moves up, there's a cable underneath the seat that's attached to the bottom of the seat, or to another sear, one of these pins that pulls out, initiates the firing pin, and it's attached to the bottom of the aircraft. And this cable lifts up until, it's about 4-foot cable. This suddenly pulls tight, pulls this pin out, and the seat fires. So only as you are leaving the cockpit, I don't know exactly when, only as you're leaving the cockpit does the rocket initiate. So you got bang, bang, bang as you're coming up, and then whoosh. So sometimes when you eject out, you black out. Not all the time. If it's a rocket seat, you will black out because it's the length of time and the G-force. I never did get to work on these, but was part of the training. We had to learn about them. Some alternatives they tried using for other aircraft. For a high altitude aircraft, they tried using this system, which is basically, there's the ejection seat and you're inside this contraption, and then you pull it all over. This would pressurise, you eject and come down. But I think with that, I can't remember if you had to pull your arms and legs in. I don't know if on initiation it closed up. I don't know if you had to close it yourself, but they didn't really go with that very well. This is something they did do. This is the F-111, and the whole cockpit ejected, rather than the two, rather than just the seats. This actually has a big airbag underneath, and it's supposed to land on that, and it'll float in the sea, or it's supposed to land nicely on the land. But if it came in at a sort of sharp angle on this corner, I think the airbag was more underneath it rather than behind it. But absolutely fascinating. You can watch demonstrations of how this operates and how the rocket behind it powers it up. But obviously you've got a lot of connections to get rid of. Far more difficult in the older aircraft, the mechanical aircraft, whereas in the computer age, if you've just got a few computer links to break, they'd be a lot easier. Another one they tried, which I thought was quite fascinating, we had in Support Command, Church Fenton was in Support Command, and they had a flight safety magazine that would come out every month. No one ever read these, to be honest. Bosses, we didn't read it. Well, I did, because I was fascinated, because there's a series of the development of ejection seats, which is where a lot of this knowledge is coming from. By the way, I've not worked on the ejection seats for like nearly 30 years, so forgive me for getting something slightly wrong. But it also looks at all the alternatives, and this I thought was brilliant. So you'd come down an ejection seat, the parachute would come out, then blades would come out, gas would extend them out, they'd start turning, the parachute would release. Then there's a little engine on the back, which would power you forward. And I don't know how far this was supposed to give you, but if you were, say, 5 miles over the line, of the enemy line, and you got shot down, in a parachute, you got a risk of getting picked up. But if you can travel 20, 30 miles, you can get away from the aircraft, which is burning, which the enemy can obviously see, and you can hopefully get to somewhere that's safer. And that's what that was designed for. This is a very famous photograph that was taken in the 60s, I think it was. So that's an English electric lightning. He's ejected up here somewhere. It's coming nose down. I don't know what actually happened. And you can see the ejection seat is unfurling. This is one of these 90-knot seats. That would have very quickly opened up, and he would have gone 1, 2, 3 and land. And I think on this one he survived. It's why they're quite happy to show it. But yeah, that is a real picture as far as I'm aware. This is the two there. There's like two. Anyway, this is the this is a really good video that I just watched as I was just putting these slides together. It is called Ejection Seat Comparisons, and the person's website, or the person's YouTube channel, is Bigfoot MK4. So Bigfoot Mark 120, all one word, has got the superb video on the different ejection seats. So the first one is the 90-knot ejection seat, as I described. If you're sat still, don't pull the handle because you're on the floor and you're likely to be killed. So what happens if you do eject? This card feels quite thick. If you jump out of an aeroplane and use a parachute to save your life, not a parachutist, but if it's just there to save your life, then you become a member of the Caterpillar Club. Caterpillars, when they hatch out, they produce a bit of silk. The air catches it, the wind catches it, and it propels them to places, and they land further away from where they were. So they've all got a chance of survival in different places. So they use it for their survival. So if you've jumped out of an aeroplane with a parachute and it saved your life, then you get a pin with the Caterpillar Club or membership. I've worn parachutes in gliders, never had to use one. But if you eject out of an aircraft, a Martin Baker aircraft, then you get to join the Thai Club, which means that a Martin Baker ejection seat has saved your life. So since ejection seats first started, 13,000 people have had their lives saved by ejection seats. 7,723 to date, and 1st of July 2024. 7,723 people have survived, have lived, because of Martin Baker ejection seats. Something we saw some of the younger pilots do when they strap in, you have a negative G strap which comes up here. You get a buckle, you get a strap and buckle from one side, which is your quick release box, strap from the other side, you click those in. You then get your two top ones handed in by the liney, you clicks them in. You tighten up the bottom ones, which protects your core, gets you into the seat. And then there's two different harnesses to adjust on the top ones. Some of the young pilots, to make them feel safer, would pull these really tight. And it's like, no. If you do that, you squash your shoulders down and you curve your spine. Now, what happens is while you're flying, because it's compressed, the vertebrae get pushed together, and there's like a spongy substance in between, which reduces in height. And if you eject, your vertebrae can knock, and that's how you can get you can knock chips off your vertebrae by ejecting. So really what you want to do, the bottom strap's really tight, that's fine. Your top one's touching, not too tight. If you have time before you eject, pull and then pull, if you can. Generally, in most cases, you eject once. I think you're about 1.5 inches shorter than you were before. Within the next couple of days, these vertebrae, the spongy areas, manage to refill again, and you get about 1 inch back, so you end up about 1/2 inch shorter. And I think generally, if you've ejected twice, they don't like you to, the RAF Medical, they don't want you to eject again. So you might move on to helicopters or commercial aircraft, transport aircraft. Commercial aircraft tend to not have ejection seats. The B-52 has some. I think the pilot, co-pilot does. The other crew eject out or jump out underneath. The F-104 Starfighter originally had an ejection seat that dropped underneath because it's high altitude aircraft, until somebody said, well, if you have a problem on takeoff or landing, you've now got to rotate the aircraft 90 degrees before you eject, otherwise you go slap into the ground. Helicopters. Helicopters can have ejection seats. They have looked into it. Now, as far as I know, the Ka-52, the Russian crocodile, alligator, whatever it is, has them. I've not seen them being used in the recent conflict. So 2 ways to get out of a helicopter. The biggest problem is obviously you've got this big fan above you, which will just chop you into pieces. So one thing you can do, you can have a seat that drop you outwards and ejects you that way. How much force that would be before it kicks you out, I don't know. The other way I have seen done, and I thought I had a picture of it, in fact it was. I can't find it, I won't worry about it. Yeah. So this is a helicopter, the blades have gone, and what happens there, it's either that piece or the one above it. That's a rocket. So the rocket comes out behind the seat, pulls up, pulls out the parachute, which is probably what that is. As the line starts to go tight, it deploys the parachute, and at the same time, it pulls the person, just the person, not the seat, it pulls them out the cockpit. But you've got the problems of getting rid of the blades first. So helicopters tend to not have ejection seats. What they do have is crushable seats. So some helicopters, you've got the undercarriage, which would take a certain amount of G-force. That might take, say, 2 or 3 G. Then, depends how the fuel tanks are mounted. They can be on bolts that are 3G, 4G. They'll just drop off. That lowers the amount of weight that the helicopter's got. So the undercarriage is now taking less weight. And then the seats, there's like it's like a steel ring, or like an aluminium ring over a steel rod. And the steel rod is ever so slightly tapered. So as the seat starts to move down, it stretches this ring, aluminium, copper, bronze, I don't know. But this stretches slightly, and it decelerates you over a longer period of time. If you hit something hard, no, you fall over on your ass, you've instantly hit the ground, you can break your coccyx. I've done that. But if it's a slower deceleration, like these seats do, then there's a lot less damage to you. So I don't know what these seats can take up to. So you might be able to hit with like 10G. You're going to be aching, you're going to be hurting, but you're going to be in one piece. That's the main sort of thing. Right, I think that's about everything. I'd love to have some comments, whatever you've worked on. Like I say, it's like nearly 30 years since I worked in ejection seats. I've probably missed a load of things out, and I might have got some things wrong. You know, this is just a conversational channel, video. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you like it and you'd like to see me do more video content in the future on aircraft, ejection seats, whatever, flying, then let me know and I shall get back to you. All right, you all take care and have a great day.